Welcome to DTR. You guys know the scenario, probably do pretty well. Two people making eyes at each other. Guy, gal. You go out in a group, they always find each other. You go to In-N-Out or somewhere to eat, they're over at the table together. You look around church and they sit together accidentally, texting, talking, hanging out. Someone needs a ride. It's her again. He volunteers right away. They start hanging out. He maybe asks her if she wants to grab a bite alone. Maybe he waits for her at church in the parking lot. Whatever the conversation setting is, it goes and it goes and it goes and it goes until one day, somebody, usually the girl, says what? What are we? What is this? You know what that's called? It's the DTR moment. We need to DTR. And at that moment, guys either run for the hills because they're scared of commitment, or they run to the next step. We need to define the relationship. The Bible gives us a clear definition of how we're to do love, romance, sexuality, conflict, intimacy, all of it, and it comes straight out of the Song of Solomon. So that's where I want you to turn in your Bible, right around the middle, to the Song of Solomon, or some people will refer to it as the Song of Songs. We're going to DTR the way God says to. Real simple. We already know the world has its definitions of relationships. The world has its processes for relationships. You take stuff out for a test drive, you don't like it, bring it back to the lot, get a new one, try that, maybe have that model for a few years. I don't like that one, send the lease back, try a new one, right? That's the way the world does it, leading to brokenness, shame, sin. If children are involved, or it leads to marriage, divorce, alimony, court, broken homes, broken hearts, broken futures, and the pattern continues. But there is a better way. And ever since the fall of man, relationships have been very hard. Sin will do that. You have pride, lust, greed, and then selfishness, which ruins pretty much every relationship there's ever been if you let it go on and on. So with that said, you're not going to be perfect, but God gives you a roadmap that'll help you progress. You don't have to be another statistic. You don't have to fail miserably at relationships. As a Christian, you need to be very aware that God has a better way. We've not been left without God's help. I remember hearing material like this for the first time when I was in college. I was a baseball player at Dallas Baptist University, and my coach put on this series by a Texas pastor named Tommy Nelson from Denton Bible Church. Tommy Nelson from Denton. I remember him starting off the series saying, it's shocking how many people think that God has given us clarity on all these other issues. Taught us how to live, told us how to worship, told us how to love one another in the church, how to serve, how to obey. But then apparently, he took this thing called marriage, relationships, and sex, like a hand grenade, tossed it to human beings and said, good luck with that one. You'll figure it out. No, he's given us clarity. The Song of Solomon is the most beautiful, romantic, sensual, sexual, clear book in all of the Bible. We should preach it more. We should study it more. We should do that with care and with clarity. But it gives us a roadmap for a life of joy, from attraction through to the courtship and dating, into biblical intimacy, sex and marriage, and then also conflict resolution, because surprise, surprise, when you get into a relationship with someone, you're going to fight sometimes. It doesn't always go easy, but God's given us a roadmap. So we're going to study the Song of Solomon over the next few sessions, and to start off, I want to ask some obvious questions and then answer some obvious questions. The first is this book literal? Yeah. The only reason people don't preach it literally is for one of two reasons. One, they're scared to talk about sex and intimacy in church. They're uncomfortable that the Bible would actually mean what it says right here? Well, we need to do better, because how many understand the world is doing its job educating an entire generation, generation after generation, on marriage and sexuality, now younger than ever. And then the church stands by and goes, well, I think Song of Solomon is just, well, Jesus loves the church. Look, Jesus doesn't talk like that to his church. This is two lovers together. God says, here's the model. Do it this way. Define the relationship my way. So yes, it's literal. 2, why in the world should you ever look to Solomon for relationship advice? If you know your Bible background, the man had 700 wives, some 300 concubines. You know what those are? They're not wives. They are women that he used and enjoyed, that he didn't have to marry. So why in the world would you want relationship from a man like that? Well, it is true. Solomon made a lot of mistakes, and he didn't always do it the right way. And in the end, his womanizing became the downfall of his life and his kingship. But most scholars agree that what we're going to study is his first relationship, his first marriage. And in some instances, he wasn't even crowned yet. Many scholars believe that this is even before he is crowned king. And so what you have is a picture of him doing it right. Now, how much more do you and I need to hear from Solomon? Well, you know what wisdom is, right? It's learning from the mistakes of others and not repeating them. So Solomon has a relationship. It's done well. It's done right. That's what we'll see. Solomon then goes on to marry 699 other women. Doesn't really believe one was enough. Anybody who's married will tell you one is plenty. And 300 concubines. So we can even look at the aftermath and say, oh yeah, I want to hear from Solomon. How did you blow it? What did you mess up? This was so good, and you went ahead and added 699 more. That can be sobering for those of us who have issues with commitment or aren't sure if marriage is for us or if one person is for us. Let me tell you, God is designed to be beautiful with one person. So in this first session, we're going to start with attraction. Boy meets girl, girl meets boy. Did an exercise not long ago with some high school and college students and young adults in a room, put them all in one place, and I gave them all flashcards and said, I want you to make a top 10 list of all the qualities that you desire. I broke them up into groups of 4 and 5. Some of them are even here right now, and they know that I'm going to read some of their lists. I have put them together in summary. We gave them a little Jeopardy music, and here's what they came up with. This was the guys' list, one guy in particular. Number 1, no lie, makes a good sandwich. Number 2, hot. Number 3, wants babies. Number 4, fun. Number 5, good family. Number 6, submissive. Number 7, kind. Number 8, nice body. Number 9, finally, Christian. It's like he threw that one in there because he knew the pastor was going to check him. Number 10, likes to travel. So apparently we're going to travel with our sandwich-making, hot Christian wife who's submissive as well and has a good family. Not a bad list, right? Not a bad list. Nothing wrong with wanting a good sandwich and nothing wrong with a good woman who can make a good sandwich. I do have an issue with Christian being number 9, though. Here was one gal's list. Very telling of what the sisters look for. Number 1, good hygiene. She probably has brothers. Number 2, he's got a good job. Number 3, handsome. Number 4, fit. Number 5, good with kids. Number 6, parents like him. It's important. Number 7, humble. Number 8, loving. She's onto something. Number 9, respectful. And then, much like her counterpart, number 10, believer. Number 9, number 10, Christian, believer, everything else there. Listen, it is right and good to have a lot of those things on your list. It's perfectly normal to have a lot of those things on your list. But how many understand physical attraction is only one part of attraction? Beauty's only skin deep. His fitness is going to fade, ladies. So if we're going to do relationships God's way, we need to know, how does God define attraction? How does he define the beginning, the genesis of a relationship? What does he want you looking for? Are you allowed to think, woo, she is beautiful. I like looking at her. Are you allowed to enjoy this man for all that he is? And he is fit and he is handsome. Are you allowed to be attracted to your future spouse? The answer is yes, but I want you to see the deeper, more spiritual definition of attraction that the Bible gives us. If you're taking notes, and you ought to be, the first thing that she notices about him in the first chapter of Song of Solomon is his presence. This man's presence enters the room or her life, and it captivates her attention. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's, verse 1, may he kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love, she says, is better than wine. Your oils have a pleasing fragrance. The first reality of attraction greets us right off the bat in this storyline. I don't say that he's handsome, because to say he's handsome would assume that, they got to be good looking. There's a definition of that. No, it's bigger than that. It's his presence. Every man will be attractive to different women. Every woman will find certain men handsome and then see one and say, he's the most handsome of all. I want to marry him. What is the difference? His presence, when he enters her life, captures her attention. She's smitten. What do we know? Well, we know that he smells good because his oils have a pleasing fragrance. So good hygiene is not a bad thing to have on your list, ladies. Warren Wiersbe digs a little deeper. He says, she yearns because of his presence and his attractiveness for expressions of his love, including touch, kisses, taste, wine, smell, ointment. No wonder she eventually wants to be taken away and married by this man. She likes the way he looks. Physical attraction, a very big part of a love story. And what are those oils all about? Well, in the old Hebrew days, they would rub oils on their bodies, and olive oil was a base ingredient for a lot of perfume and fragrances. And so here's a man who has prepared himself. He takes good care of himself, and he enters into her life, and she sees him and likes the way he smells and looks. Later on in Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verses 10 to 16, listen to the description of what she says about him. My beloved is dazzling and ruddy. Doesn't that sound like a manly term? He's ruddy. Outstanding among 10,000. So his presence stands out, even among other men. His head is like gold, pure gold, locks like clusters of dates, black as a raven. His eyes are like doves beside streams of water, bathed in milk and reposed in their setting. His cheeks are like a bed of balsam, banks of sweet-scented herbs. His lips are lilies dripping with liquid myrrh. His hands are rods of gold. How many men like to be referred to in that way? Set with beryl. His abdomen, it's carved ivory. This is six-pack abs like no one has ever had. The six-pack abs are inlaid with sapphires, by the way. His legs are pillars of alabaster set on pedestals of pure gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as the cedars. His mouth is full of sweetness. This is a respectful man. He's a romantic man. He's a kind man. What he says increases his attractiveness to her. He is wholly desirable, she says. This is my beloved. This is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. What is that phrase that we'll see over and over? This is her telling the chorus of sisters throughout the nation. This is the one my soul loves. Oh, I have found him and he looks good. I want to marry him. I want to be with him. That's some of the most dazzling Hebrew poetry you are going to find in all of the Bible, and it centers around the attraction that a woman has towards a man. Now, it needs to be said, this is godly attraction. There are no lewd or worldly tactics being used here. This isn't sinful seduction. This isn't flaunting that which would be unholy or ungodly. It's not presenting yourself in a way that tries to draw the eye that would lead to sin or lust that is beyond God's boundary line. This is holy attraction. which tells us right away that it's not taboo to find our future spouse beautiful, handsome, desirable. It is good in God's design. Sometimes in an effort to keep us Christian young folk all calm down about attraction, people will say, well, you don't need to be looking around, or you don't need to notice her, or notice this, or you can't be attracted to this, or somehow you're supposed to wake up one day when your father and mother approve and suddenly find the opposite sex attractive, and then magically a ring ends up on your finger, and then you're allowed to go down the aisle and marry them somehow, some way, without ever being smitten until the wedding night. It's not how it works. You're going to be attracted. You're allowed to be attracted. It's good and godly. His presence captivates her. This is very different from the old British way. You ever watch British movies and the old films? They're always telling the young women, oh, I know he's not attractive, but he's rich. You could learn to love him. You'll become a duchess if you marry him. It was all about social status. And the girls would struggle, and even the guys would struggle. And if you married for true love, you were just beyond the luckiest of the lucky. And if you wanted to marry for true love, it was often forbidden love. In the Bible, God wants you, He wants me to be attracted to our mate. But more importantly than what is on the outside, we see also what is on the inside. Second, we see His holiness. This is not just a physically attractive man. This is a godly man, a worshiper of Yahweh. She says in verse 3, your name is like purified oil. The word purified there in the Hebrew means to be poured out. In Old Testament temple worship, they wouldn't even pour out oil unless it was good enough, holy enough, right enough, the perfect kind of oil to be poured out in temple worship. This isn't just any oil. His name isn't just any name. This is a man who is a worshiper of Yahweh. He is approved. If you were to cross the time bridge to 2021, this is a man who is a believer in Jesus Christ, if you were to apply that to your own life. This is why Paul says to the church at Corinth in 2 Corinthians 6:14, don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. You are and I am to marry a believer. Thankfully, many Christians do, and they obey God's design, but many times people will get caught up in that first point, his presence, physical attraction. This man sweeps you off your feet, and you think, well, I'll just missionary date. I'll get him saved on the way to the altar. No, one of the key points of attraction is that his name is like purified oil. He is a godly, holy man. Ladies, I want that for you more than anything. His physical strength, no matter how fit he is, will not sustain your love. If his heart is hard towards God, it will become hardened towards you. You want a man who is humble, broken before the Lord, who is surrendered and submissive to Him. Therefore, he can lead you. No man is worth following if he does not first follow the Master. We target believers, sisters. And now some people will say, well, I know someone who married an unbeliever and it worked out. You don't use those type of miraculous, merciful stories to gamble with your future. You never want to take the exception to prove your norm. God's design is that you marry a holy man. Does He take broken people and turn the story around? Absolutely. Many of us have experienced that. But His plan for you who already know the truth is to walk in that truth. And so we see this man as a holy man. And brothers, young men, don't focus on your physical attributes so much that you neglect your spiritual attributes. It was Paul who said, bodily discipline, your physical fitness is of some benefit. So sure, be strong, be fit, be healthy. But in the end, it was spiritual discipline, discipline for the purpose of godliness that Paul told Timothy is profitable for every single thing. So yeah, be healthy, work out. But brother, if you are a gym rat and not a Bible man, we need to work on that. You're going to need to lead her beyond your fitness level. Be an example to her beyond your physical discipline. and move into the spiritual elements of your leadership one day. Prepare now, brothers, your holiness matters. Ladies, his holiness matters. Regarding the holiness of a man, a great church leader once said it this way: do not forget the culture of the inner man, I mean of the heart, how diligently the cavalry officer keeps his sword clean and sharp. Every stain he rubs off with the greatest care. Remember, you are God's sword, his instrument to bear his name. It is not great talents that God blesses so much as great likeness to Jesus. A holy minister, and I would say a holy man, is an awful weapon in the hand of God. Holiness matters. And finally, we see his reputation, his character matters. This man's reputation. His name is like purified oil. Therefore, the maidens love you. This is a man who is reputable and known. The women throughout the region do not want him and love him because he's a womanizer, because he, in our day and age, we call a player. No. They love him. They sing his praises because he is godly and reputable, and they say, wow, what a man to have, what a catch, we would say. He's endorsed. His name is known. Therefore, in verse 4, she says, draw me after you. Let us run together. I want to marry you. I want to be with you. She goes forward into imagery of what will happen one day. The king, he's brought me into his chambers. I want to marry you. I want to be brought into our chamber together. I want to be taken at the altar, married, and taken on into our future. We will rejoice in you and be glad. We will extol your love more than wine. Rightly do they love you. The chorus of the handmaidens erupts as all endorse this man and this woman and their attraction. There's some key truths there. In Israel, at the time, ancient Israel, your name meant everything. You know, Proverbs says it like this: a good name is to be desired even more than silver and gold. Your reputation, who you were, mattered. Everybody knew the kind of worker you were, the kind of man you were, the kind of home you came from, the kind of attitude you had, all of it put on display. There's none of this weird sliding into people's DMs. No one knows you. You just show up. Blind dates weren't a thing. Your name came with a resume. And this man, his name is like purified oil. He's known. He's endorsed by the people who have observed him. That means there's people in his life that can vouch for his character. He's not like a rogue male lion plundering females in various prides, kind of wandering aimlessly everywhere. Again, he's wanted because of his reputation. See, it matters what people say about you, brothers. Your pastors, your mentors, your friends, her family. It matters. It matters who you are. Ladies, it matters who he is, not just how he looks. For all the right reasons, people in your life should be saying yes. And that'll rub up against our humanity and our desires sometimes, won't it? Because we think, well, you just need to get to know him like me. Yeah, they do. Well, if you only knew him like me, you wouldn't. No, they need to know him better than you, and even before you know him and endorse him. This is a lost art in today's world. It's lost in the attraction process. It's kind of lumped over into, well, now on a date. You're already in the living room talking to mom and dad or whoever else, or not even. You're just taking her on a date in college, or you're just sending her a little message on Facebook or Instagram or what have you. We've gone way past the point where he's supposed to be endorsed in the attraction process. He may look good, but how's his character before you even make a move? That's a big thing. Because many times we end up down the road in relationships, the heart gets attached before it ever was supposed to. God's design is that your affections not be stirred too soon, that your attraction may notice him, but then you get to the deeper levels of attraction, and ladies, you pull the plug if he don't have the reputation that he needs to have to go any further. You ghost him. There's so much brokenness in the world. when we short circuit God's process and God's design. Those are the three qualities that you'll see here in the first several verses for a man. Now, what about the ladies? Fellas, what do you want to see in her? What do you need to see in her? What do you ladies need to be? First thing he notices is her beauty. He notices it because she says it. We notice it because she says it. Solomon, smitten by this woman in verse 5, who is black but lovely. I am black but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. What does that mean? Well, today we celebrate dark skin and tan skin. Well, back then, that would have been akin to a field worker if you had too much sun. Now, even in Southern California especially, we say you've been sun-kissed. These are good things. Well, back then, it meant that you were a field worker. You were slave labor. You were someone who was out there. You weren't of some means. You maybe had a problematic home life or not the kind of heritage or home that we would marry into if we were a certain type of family. It was considered not attractive to be out there burnt by the sun. But her beauty is clear. She even says, I'm dark, I'm black, I've been burned by the sun, but I'm lovely. See, she's confident. She knows that God has made her uniquely and perfectly the way that she is. The Hebrew word there, lovely, is praiseworthy. It should be noted that while my situation may not look ideal, I am beautiful the way I've been made. And what are those tents? The tents of Kedar. Well, these are Bedouin tents. They were made with black goat skin. They stood out like a sore thumb in the middle of the desert, and they were sturdy. The wind could blow through the deserts where the Bedouins, these nomadic people, would settle down, and their tents would not blow over. What does that mean? Oh, she's beautiful because the way she looks, yeah, but she's beautiful because she's strong. This is godly strength. It's dignified strength. It is a woman that is like a Bedouin tent. She doesn't blow over. How many of you fellas know it's attractive when a woman is strong yet dignified? That is part of physical beauty. The way that a woman presents herself. Even here, a woman who is not seemingly in the best situation. But her beauty also entails a delicate femininity. She's like the curtains of Solomon, she says. These would have been curtains that were delicate, made from the finest material. In contrast to the rugged tents of Kedar, these would have been silk linen, softer materials. And so while she is sturdy and strong, and it's a part of her beauty, she is also delicate and feminine. Ladies, this woman would have been apprehensive about her social status, but she knew who she was. Just like women today, made uniquely, diversely, you will be and are attractive to a man. Not every man is attracted to the same type of woman. Not every type of woman attracted to the same kind of man. Not every woman designed the same as other women. God has diversely created his people. And so you are the way you're supposed to look. She was the way she is supposed to look. She wasn't necessarily the world's type at that time, but she was his type, which is a great lesson for us today. There'll be times where maybe you don't feel like you measure up to what society says you have to be. Just understand, you don't need to be what society says you have to be. You just need to be what one man wants. You are attractive. You are beautiful. You are unique, fearfully and wonderfully made. And there will be a man who comes one day and says, wow, you were made for me. It's a beautiful thing. And it's a possible thing. And many times we get it twisted. We need to be careful holding our definitions of beauty as the only definition of beauty, that a woman has to look this way or has to look that way to be, generally speaking, attractive. God has made the female body in its unique variances, all evidence of his endless creativity. And so, we need to understand that some will be a certain height, some will be a certain size, some will have certain hair, some will have certain skin, Some will have different sizes of feet, different set eyes, different color eyes, different ears. All of it shapes you beautifully for the one you were created to marry. There's a really funny story that I like about a missionary who was sharing his experiences abroad. I love missionary stories. They open our eyes to different perspectives around the world. And this one's really good for Americans and Westerners. There were missionaries in West Africa, and they were getting schooled on what true beauty was. In fact, some of the locals weren't very happy with them. They were supposed to evangelize these locals with the gospel, but the locals were suspect of these missionaries because the way their women were. Listen to this. One of the nationals said to a missionary, "Your wife is small and thin. She is a bad reflection on you. You obviously are not providing enough food for her." True story. There was a proverb in that region of Africa that went like this: if your wife is on a camel and the camel cannot stand up, your wife is the most beautiful of all women. True story. It's a region in West Africa. You go over there with the SoCal vibes and the Hollywood imagery. They will laugh at you, scoff at you, and insult you, brothers. You're not buying her enough food. You must not work hard. Isn't it true that the definition of beauty varies from culture to culture, person to person? So, brothers, enjoy the one that you find attractive. Sisters, understand the way God made you. Don't compare it. Be careful with the Instagram scroll. The enemy has designed these things to pollute your mind, make you feel like less. You are cherished, noble, beautiful among the daughters of Jerusalem, if you will, just the way you are. But even her, in all of her beauty, and unique beauty at that, it goes beyond her skin, her outward attractiveness, and number two for her, her character. The woman's character. In verse 6, we see that. "Do not stare at me because I'm swarthy," she says, means dark, "for the sun has burned me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me caretakers of the vineyards, but I've not taken care of my own vineyard." A little play on words there. A literal vineyard that they're forcing her to work in, and then her own vineyard, meaning the way that she looks, her own hygiene, her own body, her own hair, her own presentation. She's not really able to care for herself because her brothers are forcing her to work in the fields. "Tell me, O you whom my soul loves, where do you pasture your flock?" She wants escape. She wants to be taken away, like Cinderella, swept off her feet. "Where do you make your flock lie down at noon? For why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions?" Verse 6 and 7 and on. What is it about this section that gives us insight into her character? What are the clues here biblically? Well, first we see that she's humble. Why? Well, because she's got this strength. She's black but lovely, she says. She knows who he is, who she is, and yet she says, "Don't stare at me. I'm swarthy. I'm dark. I've been out there in this situation that you may not find very attractive." She's humble about her situation. And second, she's submissive. Evidently, her father's not in the picture. Her brothers are really mean and nasty. They send her out in the field, force her to work. Many times during that era, a young sister or a woman would be an annoyance. Why? Well, because she goes on and gets married, doesn't even carry on the family name, and can't even really do a lot to build their heritage, goes on and takes someone else's name and has all his babies. So brothers say, "Get out of here. We're the future, not you." And yet, what do we see? She's out there working hard. She's submissive even to brothers that are nasty. A mother that's not able to defend her. A father who evidently is not in the picture. They mistreat her, so much so that she is not able to care for herself in the way that she would like to in order to be more attractive and more like the gals that the guys would be looking for. But here is this one whose beauty on the inside even surpasses what she looks like on the outside, laying down even her self-care to care for her family's vineyard. Third, we see that she's prudent. Look closely. Where do you pasture your flocks? Where do you make it lie down at noon? Notice when she goes to him, that's what's happening here. She wants to go to him. She wants to be swept off her feet. She says, where do you pasture your flocks? Where are you? Where do you make them lie down at noon? This is not a woman going out at night. This is not secret and seduction. This is not anything sinister. This is a woman that goes out in the middle of the day, reputable, where all can see her. She's hiding nothing. And she says, where are you in the middle of the day with your flocks? This only further extols her character. And what does she say there? Why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions? A direct reference to prostitutes at the time that would nestle up next to the shepherds and their flocks, looking to make some money off prostitution, or some gals that were a little out there and a little wild and a little loose in their living, and they would throw themselves at the shepherds and even try to snag a man by flaunting it out there in the fields, and especially at night. She says, where are you at noon? I want to come to you in the middle of the day. I have nothing to hide, no sin here, no secret rendezvous. I want to come to you with character, with honor. I am a prudent woman. That is the kind of woman you want to look for, fellas. This is the wife who Proverbs 19:14 says, is a gift directly from the Lord. Proverbs 19:14 says, house, wealth, all that's inheritance from fathers. Your daddy will give you that if he's wealthy and he leaves you something good. Oh, sure. And some people get that who don't even deserve it. Some people that get that who have terrible wives. But I'll tell you what, if you have a prudent wife, you've been given something better. That's what that proverb means, a gift from the Lord. And even the root word of prudent is an insult, isn't it, today? You're such a prude. Guys will tell you, because you're modest, because you're pure, or if you've been like those who sinned, but you found the grace of God and he poured it out upon your life and you got a new start under his mercy and you walked in righteousness and you said, yeah, no more of that old me. 2 Corinthians 5:17, I'm a new creation in Christ. I'm going to walk in holiness and in the wholeness that he gives me through the gospel. You're one of those gals. And then all of a sudden the old friends and the old neighborhood comes calling and you say, no, I'm not that type of person anymore. Oh, you're such a prude. Oh, you found religion? Oh yeah, Christ found you. A prudent woman is to be praised. That is a woman of character. Proverbs 7 also paints the picture of the adulteress. This woman who is pretty, but she is poison. She's out there looking for a man who lacks sense. She's up to no good. Her way, Proverbs 7 describes, leads to Sheol, leads to hell, leads into darkness. Promising pleasure, leading to destruction and your peril. Men, look for a prudent woman. Doesn't matter what she looks like on the outside, you make sure her character matches this on the inside. And don't forget a submissive heart. Marriage is tough. It's even tougher when two people are tough-headed, when no one will lay down their will. But also, the women today in our culture that with the uprising of feminism want to dominate. They view even just basic biblical design of a man leading in love and a woman respectfully submitting to her husband as doormat theology, or ain't no man gonna hold me down and I'm this and I'm that, as though the caricature of complementarianism, the caricature of submission is the reality of it. No, the Bible does not paint a picture of doormat theology and abuse. The Bible paints a picture, though, of a loving, romantic, respectful, godly leader and a wife that is submissive. So ladies, are you practicing now? With submission to Christ. honor of parents, honor of authority, honor of pastors, a submissive way about you. And yet this woman is strong and she's dignified and she's hardworking and she knows who she is. A submissive spirit is not a stripping away of your identity. It enhances it, makes you more attractive, more like your Savior, Christ. And fellas, understand this. There is a way about a woman who looks good, sounds good, and also thinks that everything she decides is good. You will find these women today in our culture that are so set on their way because they have been given everything their whole life and they have been the center of attention their whole life. And you come along, you point out God's design, and they want no part of it, but they look so good and they tie you around their fingers and they lead you along like a dog on a leash. Brothers, that's not God's design for you. You are meant to walk as a godly man. So don't get sucked into a woman based on what's on the outside. Make sure she has a submissive heart on the inside. Third and finally, we see a highlight here of her work ethic. Her character filled with humility, submissiveness, prudence, and then her work ethic. Read it all over again with me. Don't stare at me because I'm swarthy. The sun has burned me. Why? My mother's sons were angry with me. They make me caretakers of the fields. I've not taken care of my own vineyard. Tell me, you whom my soul loves, where do you pasture your flock? Where do you make it lie down at noon? For why should I be like one who veils herself beside the flocks of your companions? There's some scholars believe that this woman goes out in the middle of the day and is so wanting to be with him and bond with him in the attraction process that she's even willing to go and help him out in the fields. She's already a field worker. Why not go out there and help him with his sheep? She wants to get out there with him. But even if you don't find that appealing or convincing in a scholarly sense, we're certain that she's a hard worker because she's out there getting burned by the sun every day while her brothers force her to care for the vineyard. What do you think that's preparation for? A home? A marriage? The Proverbs 31 industrious woman who enhances the ways of her household, is a blessing, sees a field and buys it, is making clothing, is making her husband famously known around the city. Why? Because he has married such an honorable and hard-working woman. You know this. I know this. When you see a beautiful marriage and you see this hardworking woman, you see godliness, you know what your buddies say, you know what the guys say, right? Where'd you find her? Or the young men say, hey, can she teach my girlfriend or my wife a few things? Or you need a mentor. Who do you go to? A woman that is wild and worldly and set in her own way. So you go to godly women in the church that blow you away because you think, how in the world are they like that? I could never be that. I know my sin. I know the way I am. I could never. And the truth is, yes, you can, because the grace of God will grow you that way. And so you go what? To a woman who looks the part. Work ethic is involved in that. Do you think when there is work to be done, when there's a home to be run, when there is a future to build together, that this woman is some diva who expects to be paddled along in the gondola of love, wined and dined? No. This is the kind of woman whose dark skin serves as evidence of her labor. Her resume is packed with service. Translate that to today's world. This is a gal, men, who serves in the church. This is a gal who's biblically busy. If there's nothing to do, she's not out racking daddy's credit card. She's showing up at the church doors saying, you need bulletins stuffed, and if you don't call them bulletins, then they're programs. Either way, she is a hardworking woman. Pick your era. She's a godly young woman that shows up ready to work. She is busy, serving, discipling, being discipled. Her get-it-done approach on display every time her brothers shove her out the door to do it again in the vineyard. Now, this doesn't mean, fellas, that you can't find a wealthy girl and she's got some means. Has nothing to do with social status. Remember that. Across the board, this has nothing to do with social status. It's simply about the heart. You can have a gal that doesn't come from a lot of means, who doesn't behave at all like this, look like this, or have character like this. You could have a gal that comes from a great deal of wealth and knows the value of hard work and is honorable and mature and prudent. It's about the heart. I remember one of the most attractive qualities about my wife was her work ethic. And believe me, I'm aware of it every single day that I did nothing to deserve her. But I remember, as good as she looked and as good as she still looks, and as much as every day I wake up and still think, wow, you're still here. This is awesome. I love you. I like looking at you. I mean, we don't just love each other, we like each other. There's a difference. She's my best friend. I think back, though, to what the kicker was. You know what the kicker is, right? The thing that puts you over the edge. Oh, there's all sorts of women that take care of themselves physically. There's all sorts of women that you could define as, oh, they're pretty, or they may be attractive, fellas, but they'll be this certain type of gal that catches your eye for a certain reason. And I remember what it was for me. It was her work ethic. It blew me away. Here's this gal that is paying her bills, working at a restaurant as a server, late nights to put herself through college, sells her really cool lifted truck to drive a Yaris because she was saving gas money to keep on paying her tuition. And then I married her. And I found out what couponing was. You know those crazy ladies on reality TV with the binders? You think like they have OCD or there's some weird thing, and then all of a sudden you get married and you realize they're not crazy. We are. They're saving hundreds of dollars every shopping trip. I could pay rent because of her work ethic. And here I was, a broke kid, didn't know how to balance a budget, had to be walked through like a 4-year-old what a spreadsheet was and how to add and subtract, that you couldn't park wherever you want and then not pay the ticket or your car would get towed. All of these things, for real. Missing bills and thinking it would just pay itself. I'll tell you what saved me, probably what will save some of you brothers. A gal with character and with work ethic. You know, it'll be something for you. Maybe it won't be the same story as it's been for me. Married people will tell you all the specifics vary. But there's one common denominator. You look at what the Bible describes by way of attraction. And when you find the one your soul loves and the Lord leads you to them and it's done right, you will be married. Years gone by and you will wake up one morning and you will say, it is a miracle. It is all grace. What a gift you've given me, Lord. Thank you for your design. You know, the heartbreaking part is if you follow your heart, your emotions, your sex drive, your hormones, and everything else that the world will tell you to go after, you don't get that moment. And why in the world we do a conference like this is so you will have that in the front and back and everywhere in your mind so you can have your moment. Your moment when you give glory and honor and praise to God because you abandon the way that this world defines the relationship and you begin to DTR God's way. So how do we move now from attraction to action? Because that's why we're here, right? We want to get there. You don't just want to look at them. You want to live with them. You want to build a life with them. Well, Anthony Wood is going to show us how to do that in the next session.